And today's session, as I have already announced, is about parts of speech. Parts of speech is a basic grammar topic that is usually taught in elementary school and high school, and as such, it's not an advanced topic, but it's extremely important because it allows you to have that basic vocabulary in which you can discuss more important topics such as sentence structures and clauses and so forth. So basically, knowing parts of speech is important because it allows us to discuss other topics that are actually important. This is the list that we have to cover today. We have the nouns, and we have the verbs, and we have the adjectives, and then we have the adverbs, the prepositions, and the pronouns, the conjunctions, the interjections, and the determiners. Nouns, by definition, are basically words that are used to denote entities. It could be any entity, it could be a real object, or it could be a thought or an idea or an abstract concept. So that is basically the definition. A noun is there to denote entities. All right. Man, John, river, bravery, speed, feature, these would be the examples of nouns. Nouns are divided into common and proper nouns and count and uncount nouns. So, what is a proper noun? A proper noun is any noun that is used for a specific or a particular object or person. For instance, Peter, Paris. So, Peter is a certain person and Paris is a certain place, as opposed to a noun that's used more generally, like a picture or pen, which could mean any picture or any pen. That's a common noun. Now, it's important to remember that proper nouns are always capitalized. So you will write Peter with a capital P wherever it occurs in a sentence, as opposed to a common noun which will not be capitalized unless it's at the start of the sentence. So that is one thing. Common and proper nouns. The second thing which you need to know as a writer are count and uncount nouns. Count nouns are those which simply you can count. For instance, a jewel. It could be 1 joule, 2 joules, and 100 joules. But an uncount noun, on the other hand, are those which cannot be counted. For instance, sweetness. Now, this is why I have mentioned this here, because it's very important. Most of us who do not have English as their first language, they make mistakes in the use of count and uncount nouns. So, for instance, if I were to say, I like my students because they are sweet, and I say that I like my students for their sweetnesses, it would be wrong, because sweetness is not countable. It has to be sweetness, whether it's for one thing or many. On the other hand, count nouns can be counted, so it could be 1 or 2 or more. So this is the most important distinction that you need to know. In terms of writing advice that you need to take, well, remember, any writing which is not clear is not good writing. All writing has to be clear in order for it to be interesting and clear. If it's not clear, it's not good writing. And one way to make your writing clear is to look at your sentences. and see if you can use subjects which are either living things or concrete objects rather than vague or abstract nouns. One abstract noun or vague noun is called nominalization. Nominalization is the process of making a noun from a verb or any other word. For instance, you have the verb analyze and you turn it into analysis, a noun, or you have the verb observe and you make a noun out of it called observation. Now, these nouns are nominalizations. Remember, it's not a good idea to use nominalizations in the start of sentences. Instead, it's better to begin your sentences with either living subjects or concrete subjects. And we will see how. For instance, we have a sentence here which says installation of the application should be done next. This sentence has a nominalization in the start. Therefore, it's not a clear sentence. How do we make it clear? Well, we make a subject which is either living or a concrete subject. For instance, you can make a subject you and you just say you should install the application next. Now this sentence is clearer, it's more crisp, and you can feel that by just reading it. Likewise, there's another sentence, cowardice makes people die many times before their death, but valiance is bravery. Valiance lets them taste death but once. Now, again, this sentence has two clauses or two sentences, and both of them begin with a nominalization. One nominalization is cowardice, and the other one is valiance. If we turn these into active subjects, the sentence becomes much better. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Now you can clearly see the difference in the two sentences. The first one is vague and it takes more energy to understand. The second one is clear and it's easy to understand. Therefore, the one most important lesson that you should take from this session is, if you want your sentences to be clear and crisp, try to make the subjects either living objects or concrete subjects. And we will discuss this in the future, but I just want you to understand this message. Then we come to verbs. What are verbs? Verbs are actually words that describe an action or an event. So either an action or an event. All right. Examples would be go, write, laugh, change, dig, and so forth. Verbs may be main verbs, which are actually the ones that describe an action or an event. And then there could be also another group of verbs called auxiliary verbs or helping verbs, which actually are just there to help a main verb. Verbs in English have 5 main forms. The base form, which is, for instance, smash, run, go, help, and so forth. This is the base uninflected or infinitive form of a verb. The second form is past, and that would be smashed, ran, went, and so forth. The third form is past participle, and it's smashed, run, helped, and so forth. Now, it's important to remember that many verbs are irregular, which means that just by adding ed to them, you cannot turn them into past or past participle. So you have to remember them and learn them separately. Then there is a fourth form, which is by adding ing, and that would be running, smashing, and so forth. And finally, there is another form which is used for a third person. What is third person? It could be a pronoun such as he, she, or it could be the name of a person. When this happens, that is, when you use a third person, then you add either s or es with the verb and to complete a sentence. So I would say I go, but I won't say he go. I must say he goes. Advice on verbs. It's very important. Just like the nouns, the second most important place where you need to work in order for your sentences to be more crisp and emphatic is the verb. And verbs, as I said, are of two types: the main verbs and the auxiliary verbs. The main verbs themselves can be divided into two verbs. So, main verbs could be action verbs, which actually describe action, or they could be state or static verbs. Static verbs are those which do not actually describe any action but still are verbs, like he looked sad, he appeared angry, he sounded upset. So appear, sound, look, these are static verbs, as opposed to action verbs which describe an action. For instance, he cried, he ran, he jumped. These are action verbs. Action verbs are actually uh, more important in terms of writing because action verbs make it easy for the reader to understand what is written, and it makes writing more visual. Therefore, it's important to use main verbs more often as compared to static verbs. Another piece of advice that I already discussed is that irregular verbs can be challenging for people who are non-native to English, because many irregular verbs have to be remembered and memorized separately. Adjectives. What are adjectives? Adjectives are words that describe the quality or state of something. For instance, happy, easy, tiresome, arduous, and so forth. Adjectives basically are used either with nouns, or they can occur without a noun, like a happy person. So John is a happy person. This was an easy exam. That was a tiresome job. I won't settle for such arduous work. These are all adjectives, but attached to nouns. You can use them separately as John was happy, the exam was easy, the task is tiresome, and so forth. In terms of what you need to know about adjectives, these are the things. First, you need to know that adjectives are gradable. They can have degrees. So something can be good, but something can be better than another thing, and something could be the best of all. And this, as you know, is called the base form, which is when there is no comparison. So good would be the base form, and comparative would be better, and superlative would be best. Normally, when there is a one syllable word and some two syllable words, you just add er and est to the word, to the adjective, and that makes it comparative and superlative, such as the base form of the adjective fast can be made comparative by faster, adding er, or by adding est to make it fastest. Many other words which are two syllable or have more syllables in them can be made comparative or superlative by adding more and most. So if we have the adjective beautiful, we can use more beautiful and most beautiful. What is the writing advice that you must take? In terms of writing advice, the most important thing that you need to know is that adjectives can make your writing more colorful and more attractive. Therefore, it's a good idea to know how to use adjectives. However, it's also very important not to overdo it, because if you use them too frequently, they can make your writing look a bit overdone and therefore difficult to read. For example, the sentence, "The dark sky in the languid evening was gloomy and saddening." Now, this is a perfectly correct sentence grammatically, but you can just say it in a simple way that the evening looked gloomy and sad, for instance. Adverbs. Adverbs are another group of words which are used to add further information to a verb, to another adverb, or to an adjective. And examples are really, well, slowly, sharply, fast. Usually, when you add ly to an adjective, it turns it into an adverb. But there are many adverbs which do not have this ly at their end. There are different types of adverbs, and they can be divided in terms of how they modify the verb or adverb or an adjective. So some adverbs actually add information about the manner of how a verb or an adjective occurs. So, for instance, he spoke loudly. Loudly is the manner of how the speaking was done. Or he eats well, he sings well, or and so forth. Then there are the other adverbs, such as those of time. And the example would be, they reached early, he came late. Early and late here are the adverbs of time. Then you have adverbs of place. John got here. Here is, again, it refers to the place. So it's an adverb of place. Degree. It's quite hot. Now, quite here is the adverb of degree, and you can use other adverbs here like it's rather easy, or it's fairly green. So fairly would be a degree of the adjective green, and these are all different types of adverbs. The advice for adverbs is the same as for adjectives. They can make your writing more clearer, more precise, and more detailed. However, you must not overdo it. Don't use a lot of adverbs in your sentences, and it will be easy for your readers to follow you. Prepositions. What are prepositions? Prepositions are that part of speech uh, which shows the location or order between two words. So these are basically words which either show the location or order between two words. So inside, to, on, at, off, these are all prepositions. Remember, some prepositions also function as conjunctions or adverbs. For example, the word when. When is a preposition, but it can also work as a conjunction or an adverb depending on the context. Advice about prepositions. It's very important to know that prepositions are not easy to understand, especially for those people whose native language is other than English. And that's because many prepositions in different languages are not exactly the same in English. So, for instance, if I were to say in Urdu or in any other language, and many other languages, I would say I sit on a chair. But in English, we don't say that. I would say I sit in a chair. Or I would say in in many languages, it would be said, he came on 12 o'clock. But this is wrong in English. The preposition on does not come with time like this. You would say he came at 12 o'clock. So came at 12 o'clock is different from on 12 o'clock. That would be a mistake. And this mistake usually occurs because the actual preposition is different in different languages. That's why it's important to let observation be your guide. You have to observe how different prepositions are different in English and in other languages. Then there's another advice that is commonly given to students who want to learn more about writing. It's that you should not end a sentence with a preposition. Why is that so? It's because, generally speaking, best sentences should begin and end with a stressed syllable, and prepositions usually are not stressed. So it's better to use the end and the start of a sentence for other parts of speech, such as subjects, objects, and so forth. But this grammatically usually is not wrong. You can still make a grammatically correct sentence with a preposition in the end. But for stylistic reasons, it's better to keep the preposition somewhere in the middle. Pronouns. Pronouns are words that are used in place of another noun. So they actually replace a noun. And why do they do that? Usually to avoid repetition and to avoid redundancy. So if I were to say, John is a good person, John is kind, John is friendly, I would say John is a good person, he is kind, he is friendly. And instead of using John thrice, I can just use it once, and then the rest I can mention John by just using the word he. Different types of pronouns exist in English, and the examples would be I, you, that, when, and so forth. The most important ones, though, are these. Personal pronouns. What are personal pronouns? We all know what they are. They are I, you, me, she, her, and so forth. And then the possessive pronouns, yours, ours, reflexive pronouns such as myself, yourself, interrogative pronouns, who, which, what, demonstrative pronouns such as these, those, this, reciprocal pronouns, one another, each other, relative pronouns, who, whom, which. Again, it's not the time right now to discuss these in details. The idea is for you to just identify what pronouns mean and what function they serve. So these are words which actually can replace a noun in order to avoid redundancy or repetition. In terms of writing advice, it's very important to know how to use personal pronouns accurately. Again, the problem arises because of the differences in which English language makes use of pronouns as compared to other languages. And I'll discuss that in a separate lecture how that happens, because it's very important. Many users of English who do not have English as their first language, they make very common mistakes in the use of personal pronouns without ever realizing it. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are actually words that link two words, phrases, clauses, or sentences. So they are actually connecting words, and the examples would be and, but, or, either, for, since, and so forth. Conjunctions are very important to know, and you need to know them by heart. You need to know their categories, because as we go to more classes, more advanced topics, it would not be possible to understand those topics unless you have a good handle on on this topic. So conjunctions could be coordinating conjunctions, which means they are used when you are coordinating two words, phrases, or clauses. And subordinating conjunctions, which are used when you have a subordinate clause or phrase and you have a subordinate and you have a main clause to attach to it. And then the correlative, which correlative conjunctions, which you use when you have two phrases or two clauses to compare or correlate. And examples of coordinating conjunctions are far and, but, yet, or so. There is a mnemonic called fanboys for these ones that you can use to remember. And for subordinating conjunctions, there are many. You can use after, although, since, so, because, even though, every time. So they could be one word or even two word conjunctions. And correlative conjunctions are either or, neither nor, both, X and Y, for instance. So these are all conjunctions. And again, we will be discussing them because coordination, for instance, and subordination are both important topics that we need to cover when we come to style and to composition. Uh, the, After grammar, we are going to cover composition. And if we don't know what coordination is, what subordination is, or at least we don't know the conjunctions, we won't be able to understand those more advanced topics. So for now, I just want you to know what these are, and then we'll go into the detail later. Interjections. Interjections are simply words which are used to express an emotion such as happiness or surprise. And examples would be oh, ah, oops, and so forth. Now, look at these examples. The first one says, oh, comma, I see. Wow, comma, that's great. And then, ouch, exclamation mark, that hurt. Then, oops, exclamation mark, and then comma, I hope I did not break the thing. So these are the different ways in which you can use an interjection, and usually you can follow it by a comma or a sign of exclamation. It's very important not to use more than one sign of exclamation. One should be enough. So in a Facebook post, if you say wow, and then you add 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 signs of exclamation, it doesn't make it more emphatic. It just reflects that you don't know your punctuation well. Finally and lastly, determiners. Determiners are basically words which are used before nouns to determine their quantity, number, or specificity, etc. So, for instance, you have man. Man alone is a noun, but a man is just one man. The man is a specific man. Two men is two. One man is one. So these are the determiners, and the examples would be one, this, the, and a. In English, there are different determiners, but four are very important, and they are articles, which are the indefinite article a and an. So, an apple, a boy, and then the apple or the boy. These are the uses of articles. A and an are both indefinite articles. The is a definite article. Definite means when you use it with a common noun, it becomes almost a proper noun. It becomes a specific thing. Demonstratives are used to indicate certain things. For instance, this, that, these, those. And then quantifiers are also determiners. For instance, some, few, many, and so forth. Numbers 1, 2, 3, and up to infinity, all are also determiners because usually they will come before a noun. Possessives such as my, his, her, and so forth are also considered determiners because they actually determine a relation for a noun. So if I say my head or his pen or her computer, it's actually describing a relation or determining a relation of that noun. So although some grammarians group them with pronouns, personal pronouns, many say that they are basically um, determiners. All right. So that is probably all about it. Um, Advice about articles is that the use of a, an, and the is more complex than it sounds. And with experience, you can learn it. But definitely, there are some common mistakes which we will discuss in the future.